Hi, my name is Fiona Kane, and welcome to the Wellness Connection podcast with Fiona Kane. So, today I was inspired by a quote that I heard. This quote is a quote about mental health, and I'd never really stopped and thought about the definition of mental health or what exactly does it entail. I kind of had this vague idea that, well, it's about the way your mind functions, and it's about the health of how that functions, and it's about nutrition, it's about lots of things. But that might sound really silly, but some things you just never really stop and think about the definition. Or is it just me? I don't know. But just definitions, sometimes I hear a definition of something and I go, oh yes, and it just takes takes me in another direction or gives me another into that topic that I hadn't thought about before. So anyway, that's just me talking about how my brain works. I don't know. We're all different. So anyway, this one particular quote, it was from Jordan Peterson, who's a psychologist. And look, I listen to lots of podcasts, read lots of books, and with people who are from all over the political spectrum and all different thoughts and all different things. So get used to the fact that I'm quite broad with who I'm inspired by or who I learn from. I think it's good to learn from as many people as possible. So, anyway, I'm going to read the quote. So, he said that mental health is the harmonious balancing of a network of relationships to yourself, but also to other people. And so that's the quote is Jordan Peterson. So that really got me thinking. Okay, so we think about, and it's two things. Okay, so one is looking at the relationship to ourselves, which is really important. And I'll touch on that a little bit here. But I also wanted to talk about the relationship to other people and how that is being affected now, or what's happening with that these days. So, uh, interestingly, the other person I would like to quote is Johann Hari, and he said, "Bees need a hive, and humans need a tribe." And he's absolutely right. As human beings, we actually do need a tribe. And that's something I've talked about in previous podcasts, actually previous episodes, where I have talked about how, as human beings, because we because one of our highest values is to stay in the tribe, we will do anything to stay in the tribe. And the reason it's one of our highest values is because that actually at a time meant life or death. So if you think about back in the day where we actually did live in tribes, you needed the tribe to survive. And if you got kicked out of the tribe, I don't know, you wouldn't have, uh, you would have to hunt for your own food. You'd have to do the survival yourself. You'd be at more risk of being attacked by animals or another tribe or something like that, being taken as a slave and moved on somewhere else. So, survival we did need our tribe for survival. So it's an absolute survival thing for human beings. Now, these days, it's less obvious because we can live and we do live quite individual lives, and people live in smaller, particularly in the Western world. I'm talking about, not in places like Asia and various third world countries, etc. But in the Western world, largely now, we do live in these smaller not smaller homes, but smaller families. So it's rather than living as an extended family, which is when I was younger, I lived with my grandmother, and then at different times there were cousins and there were aunts, and there was a whole bunch of us that kind of lived together or near each other. Whereas now, often you get parents and the one or two children, and they might live in a different state or a different country or a different place to the rest of their family. So people aren't living so much in a tribe anymore. We are living quite separately. And then to add to that, you often have like both parents are working, or people might be in single parent families, and we're all using gadgets and things these days. So we do kind of live quite separate lives or sort of individual lives. And actually, I was listening to a podcast this morning because I'm always listening to a podcast, and it was Coleman Hughes. It was his podcast, and he was talking to uh, I think I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her name, but I think it's Jean Twenge. So it's Twenge. I hope I pronounce her name properly. And there was an episode called Boomers to Zoomers. And in that episode, they were actually talking about how, with the invention of, since 2012, we have had most people have had smartphones in their hands, even young adolescents or even young children. But young people have had, they've grown up with these smart devices in their hands. And what's happening is we are now living more separately because we're in our own little world on our smart device. And there's a few things that have sort of happened with that. So, one of those things is, of course, our smart devices, if we're on socials, which is usually where we are, if we're on various social media, with social media, well, there's algorithms, isn't there? And they have algorithms set up to keep you on social media, to keep you interested. Therefore, what they do is they show you things that they think that you will agree with or that you like. So if they've seen that you've liked a certain podcast or a certain pop band or a certain political view or whatever it is, they will start showing you more and more of that. So essentially, what happens is in our social media and on our devices, we become quite insulated into our team, whatever our team is. So everyone we speak to has the same opinion. Everyone we speak to likes the same things. So therefore, we're not really getting challenged, and we're only meeting people with a quite a small range of opinions and things because we're only exposed to those people in our socials. Um, and anyway, what um, what this lady was saying is she said that so since 2012, there's been more loneliness and depression in adolescence, and she said that, look, obviously there's lots of factors. You can't say there's this one thing that's caused it, but when they were looking at kind of all the factors and if you look at it across all different countries as well, so different countries which might be experiencing, there's different politics or different other things going on in the country. So it's not just about that country's politics or whatever. She said that generally speaking, it was the introduction of the smartphones and these children all having them in their lives, or these young adolescents having them in their lives from a very very young age. And you only have to see how, and this isn't just young people now, this is my age, this is all of us, how but young people might be more prone to it. I don't know. I don't have facts around that, but how we are in social events. So you'll go out to a concert or a social event of some kind, and so many people are just like they're on their device. So they might be together, but they're not together. They're together on their device, and they use their device to take the selfie or to do the video, and they might be doing the hashtag and tagging each other on social media, but they're not actually connecting with each other kind of there. There was actually a country singer, I can't think of her name, but she stopped a concert the other day because she was annoyed with people doing selfies up the front or something. She's like, oh, why don't you just here? And I know myself that I've seen a lot of people watch concerts through their phone. They record the whole concert, and I would argue that you're missing it. And you could say, oh, you could play it back, but are you going to play it back? I don't know. But if you could play it back, well, then you could play a concert, or you could go to YouTube and play something that somebody else had recorded. But I feel like if you're going to go to the concert, I want to be there. So it doesn't mean you can't lift up your phone and record little bits and pieces, or even where it's legal, take photos or whatever it is. But this whole kind of going to a concert and watching the whole thing through your phone, or even worse, turning around and getting people to watch the whole thing through you, so it's like, look at me at this concert, look how sexy I look in front of whoever the singer is or whatever, which is a really, it's a thing happening now. That's not being at the concert, that's being seen at the concert. So that I would argue that that's even a further step away from actually being at the concert, because you're just worried about people seeing you there, as opposed to just being there and having the actual experience, having the human experience. And being a big fan of music, I would argue that when you're at a really good concert and the audience is feeling all connected, and you're all kind of that you're vibing, and you're really enjoying the music, that is a really great connection experience for human beings. And if you'll experience it through your phone, you could be missing that. So, yeah, that's one of the things that I've just witnessed with phones, but also restaurants, cafes, that sort of thing. I know even with my husband and I, sometimes I've got, he's got to say to me or I've got to say to him, okay, I'm over here. Can you put that down? Right. So it's not just young people who are doing this. It's all generations or most generations who have become attached to their phone and attached to socials. But what we do know is it is causing more loneliness and depression in adolescence. And the other thing that the other aspect of it with socials is there's a few things with socials, but it's one is that they are getting addicted to the whole kind of dopamine thing. So you get a dopamine hit, which is it makes you feel good, and you get that hit every time you get that like or that kind of whatever it is that you're looking for, acceptance, likes, views, whatever the thing is on socials. You get that from those likes, but uh, uh, at the same time, like, I would argue that it's the opposite if you don't get the likes and if you don't get the support. So if people either ignore your post or they ignore what you've said or your photo or whatever you're trying to get them to pay attention to, or if they are actively mean about it or nasty or whatever, then you don't get the dopamine hit. You feel really sad or you feel depressed or you feel angry or upset or whatever. So it kind of affects your mental health in a negative way. And when you think about it, if we the issue is that if we're addicted to this dopamine hit and we get addicted to it at quite a young age, of course, it's the sort of thing that we're after with certain drugs or when we're smoking or like when you smoke a cigarette, you get a dopamine hit. We get it from other things as adults, but it's a shame that you've got children chasing after it on their phone, and that's kind of the only way they can feel good is if they get this socials approval. Whereas once upon a time, I suppose we still always wanted to get approval. We certainly wanted to get it from our tribe, but it was kind of smaller. It was getting approval from the local people, from your group of three friends at school. That's quite different to kind of trying to get this random approval from a whole bunch of people on socials. And I know some of them would be the same people. It would be the same friends and things. But then it's not just those people usually that you're trying to get the attention of or that you're trying to impress on socials. So, we have these gadgets between us. We view the world through those gadgets. We view the world through the algorithm that models it or molds it to what they think that we want to see. So we might get a lot of that sort of feedback where you just get the feedback of, yes, you're right. Your beliefs are right. Yes, you're right. Yes, you're right again. So it's that kind of loop where you just keep getting that proof that you're right, uh, rather than getting challenged in any way. And the other thing is, of course, people are learning they're doing kind of all sorts of weird, TikTok challenges, some of them quite dangerous, and, they're learning how to self harm online. Not saying that we couldn't learn or do those things before, but now the ability to do them, the things that, for things to become, um, for things to become a really big thing really, really quickly. Now, obviously, being online allows that to happen so much faster, so much more. So we really do have to be aware of that aspect of, if we're going back to this of the original saying, well, mental health is a harmonious balancing of network of relationship to yourself, but also to other people. Therein lies the problem is that are we having relationships with other people, or or are we having them through these social kind of through devices? And then of course the last few years, because we had the whole COVID thing, we've all been more disconnected and more and now I even find myself, and I notice this with people I talk to, we're kind of less inclined to go out now and more inclined to want to stay at home. A lot of people will do things through online rather than in person. And it's getting us used to being back out there again. And I think that the younger generation is hugely affected because what you learn from social interaction at school is invaluable. And part of that is also being able to see someone's face. So even if you are with other people, but they're all wearing masks and they're all terrified of each other and they're all so many feet apart, I would argue that you're still not learning a lot through social interactions. So yeah, that's just viewing mental health and the other aspect of it was, the relationship to yourself. And now, again, the relationship to yourself, if we're online all the time, are we getting the time that we need to develop that self? Like, who am I? Who am I in the world? Because I know that for me, that development is still happening. I'm 52 and I'm still developing, because that's what we do over our lives. But for me, a lot of it came from, I read some great books, but I also had lots of interactions with friends at school and in social events and in my workplace. And that I met, the exciting thing in my life is I really love, politics and people in the world, and I'm interested in lots of things. And I met interesting groups of people who challenged me, and I still do. I still meet people or talk to people or watch podcasts or whatever, but of people who challenge me. So they might challenge my idea of what I believe something to be, or they might challenge me personally on, the good thing about having friends around is friends will kind of tell you. And a previous podcast, I think it might have been the last episode, I was saying don't lie to yourself. And the good thing about friends, if you have good friends, is they'll tell you when you are lying to yourself. So a good friend will say, not really true. Not so sure about that. I think having yourself on, what's going on. So when we're around other people, I feel like we have that ability to experience growth. And I don't mean that it always has to be around other people. I think it needs to be a combination of time alone and time with other people. But I feel like we're possibly not getting either of those, because even when we're alone, we're not really alone. Not if we're on group chats, not if we're, looking for those likes on socials, not if we're just constantly connected to the world and what everybody else's opinion is. So I feel like if we're missing out on that time where, I read lots of books and I had time to think and I had time to listen to songs, and I'd get out, and showing my age, I'd get out the album covers and I'd read the liner notes from back to back and learn everything about that music and that song, and get, really get it, go deep, a deep dive into books and songs and all sorts of things. And that's how you develop who you are. It's how you develop who you are, because you read things that challenges you, read things that you agree with. There's other things that challenge you, and you develop a sense of like, well, what are your values and what do you believe in and what do you believe is important? And you go to work and you learn how to pay your own bills, and you learn how to pay your own rent or buy a house or whatever the things are that we do. I know that's more challenging for some people now. But still many people rent or they sublet or that kind of thing. And all of those things teach you about yourself. And when you're in a relationship, you're in a long-term relationship, you certainly do learn a lot about yourself in a relationship. Particularly a healthy relationship, you'll both learn a lot from each other. So I feel like the things that we need for mental health, obviously I've talked in the past, I've talked about nutrition and I've talked about exercise, and probably at some point I'll talk more about sleep. I don't know if I've talked about it much, but I think I've mentioned it. But obviously, those things are all really, really vital for good mental health. But thinking about where you spend your time and who you'll spend your time with, we do need to spend time alone. And even just the idea of, when kids used to play games, you learn a lot. You learn how to play a game, you learn how to lose, you learn how to win, you learn how to be gracious in both of those. You learn what happens when you're not gracious in both of those. You learn how to interact with other people, and you learn what happens when you lie or when you tell the truth, or what are the consequences of those things. You learn what happens in the group if you don't know how to behave in a sensible way and regulate your emotions and be kind and be gracious and all of those things in a group. You get very quick feedback about how that's going to work for you, which is not going to work for you, right? So when we play games, we learn those things, and when children play games, they learn those things. And you play games on your own, or you're building things or creating things, or you're drawing or you're writing, and all of that is time for you to really think about the world, think about yourself, and think about who you are in the world. But then the interactions with other people also give you the opportunity to mold that and to think about that. And so it's those interactions both internally and alone, and those interactions kind of externally and with other people that do allow us to create good mental health. And I think that, and to be more flexible and more able to, and I think I've had this, I'm sure I've had an episode where I've talked about this, but this ability for us to manage when life happens, because life does happen. And if we're really kind of inflexible and really solid and flexible and unable to adapt to change, life is going to be really, really challenging. It's challenging anyway, but it's more challenging if we don't know how to adapt to change and all of that kind of thing. And we learn more about how to do that when we spend time alone, thinking about things, learning about things, and we spend time with others. That is how we learn more about ourselves, actually, because it's you learn when you learn how other people interact with you or how you sound to other people or how they experience you, you can learn more about yourself. And I would argue that if you are getting that information from Facebook likes, or if you're getting that information from who does the best selfie photo in front of the mirror, uh, that's not the feedback that I'm talking about. It's not the feedback that you need. It's not real. It's just it's so the problem with the online world is, as much as I love it, it allows me to do things like this. I love technology and I love the access to it. We do have to understand the positive and the negative sides of it, particularly for growing people, growing brains, and people maturing and learning how to be in the world. And online is a really great tool, but we need to see each other in person. We need to experience things in person. And if you're feeling anxious about that, there's even more reason why you need to be doing that, right? Because you won't become less anxious by not doing it. You become less anxious by doing it over and over and finding out that you can survive. So I think it is really, really important to understand that, yes, mental health is the harmonious balancing. Notice that harmonious balancing. I like that because it's just saying that it's not a fixed thing. It's not fixed. It's like, oh, like I talked about before, I've got my health fixed, tick, or I've got my mental health fixed, tick, or a spiritual growth, I'm all there, tick. No, it doesn't work that way. It's the harmonious balancing. So balancing, it's like a verb, it's a doing word. So it's something we're doing. So it's active. So it's something we're doing all of the time. So it is about our relationship to ourselves and it is about our relationship to other people. And I think there needs to be a balance of both. And both of those need to have time without social media and time without devices. They need time doing other things, exploring art or reading or learning or whatever it is, cooking, just doing something that isn't about being online constantly. And it's not about, as much as I like to share my food photos, and I do that, but it's not about cooking to share the photos on Insta. It's about cooking to learn about cooking and to just have that creative expression and to nourish yourself, and your family. And actually, that was another thing too. It's like spending time together. What I recommend is for families in particular, that you have mealtime together. You do whatever you can to have mealtime together, sitting at a table together. Because so many people, they all just go to their separate, they go to their bedroom or they go to the lounge and they're just on their device or on the television. And I know last year, in my blog, I wrote about this, that I'm just sort of reading from this. In 2022, there was a survey from the American Heart Association. And what they found is regularly eating meals with others lowers our stress and, in turn, the risk of heart disease. They found that 84% of the 1,000 adults surveyed said that they wished they could share more meals with loved ones. And 91% of participants reported lower stress levels for the whole family from eating meals together. 59% said they also made healthier choices when eating with others. So, just simple things like having a meal with family, it really helps with our stress, but it helps us connect, right? So back to that, bees need a hive and humans need a tribe, which is what Johan Hari said. He's got some really great stuff to read too, and online stuff. You can go searching for him. He's right. We do need a tribe, and we do need connection, and we need that human connection, and that's what allows us to thrive. That's part of how we thrive, and it's okay to have alone time and be alone as well. Actually, it's really, really important. Alone isn't necessarily lonely. It's not the same thing. but you can be lonely with a whole lot of people around you. However, we do need a tribe. And, I feel like, and I know this is the advice I'm giving to myself and the advice I'm following myself and the advice I'm giving other people is that now we are kind of coming out of that. I know COVID's still around and I know we've got to take a certain level of, everyone's got different risk profile, all that jazz. But the truth is, it's here and it's here to stay. And we're going back out in the world. And I think that it's really, really important, particularly if your mental health is, if you're feeling depressed or feeling low, it's really, really important to start connecting back in with other people. And I know this absolutely for myself because I've gone through a couple of years of feeling really low for a whole lot of reasons. I've had grief and a whole lot of things happen in life. A lot of people the same. So I'm not special. However, I realized that part of the issue for me was that I hadn't reconnected in outside of myself as much as I needed to. And in the last few weeks and over the next few weeks, I'm starting to reconnect or connect with new people or reconnect with people from my past or people I just haven't seen for a long time. And I'm realizing how much I missed it. I'm realizing how important it is and how important it is to have people to share ideas with, or people just to witness you, or people to just to chat to and have fun with, and talk about your latest favorite TV series or movie or book or whatever it is. Really, really important. So that's one of my prescriptions. My prescription to you would be the same. It's to get out and, reconnect with people from the past or find some new people. And whether that means, joining a book club, and there are ones in person and ones online, or whatever other social group. But even with social groups, like I'm in a social group, I'm a really big fan of the singer Kate Miller Heidke. And for a long, long time, I've been connected to her since I think 2006, 2007. I've been connected to her fans, other fans, but not just online. We actually all met sort of pretty early on outside of her shows, but also largely at her shows. So I developed a whole network of new friends through my love of Kate Miller Heidke and her music but I didn't just keep it online. Obviously, you're careful about meeting people that you meet online and all that sort of stuff. You take the normal safety precautions. However, yes, you can meet people online, but then in some sort of group online, but one that you can go and meet other people in person as well. So it is really important, or it could be volunteering, it could be a job, and just chatting to your friends at work or whatever it is. But humans do need a tribe, and I think that the sadder we are and the more depressed we are and the more lonely we are, the more we feel isolated and like we don't have that. And often we have more of it than what we realize. It's actually Guy Winch did a great TED talk on what's it called, emotional first aid. I think something about emotional first aid, and it's well worth watching. Guy Winch TED talk, emotional first aid is part of the wording of it. Um, and he talks about in that how, again, loneliness and how we perceive the world differently when we're lonely. So we perceive the world as a harsher place and meaner place, and we perceive that nobody loves us and all that kind of stuff, when really more often than not, that's just not true. But we perceive it that way because we're feeling lonely. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. But I think, back to the beginning is, mental health is the harmonious balancing of a network of relationships to yourself, but also to other people. I think we have to really think about that. What does that look like for us, and what do we need more of in our lives to make that work? And the young people in our lives, if we are dealing with adolescents, what can we encourage in them to support them in their mental health? Anyway, that's enough for today. Got some exciting guests coming up soon. So I am starting to get guests. Sorry, it's taking me a while to figure it out, but I'm getting there, and some really interesting chats coming up. So I'll be excited to share those with you. Okay, talk to you next week. Thanks. Bye.